Hey, crew. I wanted to do a really quick response to your response to my response to your email about Charles Eisenstein's essay. Um, and I think I probably didn't do a very good job. I took a few notes when I was actually, so first of all, I listened to it. There's a recording of him reading it. And I listened to it. It's like an hour long rather than reading it myself. And I listened to it while I was doing other things. Um, so I may have missed some stuff, but I didn't do a very good job of explaining what I was thinking about it. And I just did a quick overview. So I just wanted to say that I basically agree with everything that you brought up and all those points. And I really enjoyed that. And I felt like that was the first three quarters of the essay. And the reason why I was disappointed at the end that he started proposing solution. Well, so he started talking about like the need to allow alternates to traditional medicine and things like that, which is, in my mind, proposing solutions. And as you said, the guy has an undergrad in mathematics and philosophy, and it's it's always dangerous to think, what's the saying? Nothing's worse than someone who's just read one book about a subject because then they think they know everything. Um, and I think when I was talking about, you interpreted what I said as being that we should defer to scientists, and that's not what I meant at all. Um, what I meant was our decisions need to be informed by domain experts, and I actually use the term domain experts, and I don't think, and I was thinking beyond scientists when I do that, and the place where that comes from is when I was the IT director for the tribes, um, and we designed the IT department to have, and I know I've talked to you about this before, like a director level position. And when I read the literature about why you need an IT director, the reason is because if you ask the domain expert, the computer guy, what the solution should be to making the best IT system in the world, he or she is going to minimize the human interaction with the system because most of the problems that arise come from human interaction with the system. Of course, that defeats the purpose of the system because the system is there to serve human needs. So my job as the IT director was to go to my IT manager and Sean and say, Sean, this is our need. These are the things we need. And Sean would say, well, here's a solution. And then my job was to ask questions to ensure that his solution met the need, but also met a whole suite of other limitations like costs and manpower and that sort of thing. So my decisions about what we should do with IT, usually I did defer to him, but often there was that tension there. And he and I talked about our job. His job was to push me to more technical solutions, and my job was to push back on him to more human solutions. And in the hope that that tension will work out, I can explain to him why the technical solutions don't meet the need, and he can explain to me what the best technical solutions might be. And so when I see Eisenstein talking about, injecting vitamin C, he's has an undergrad in philosophy and mathematics, and he's talking about one possible thing there, and and rather than him proposing that as a solution, we need leaders who will get a bunch of people in the room and listen to the technical experts and then figure out how to, economists, anthropologists, sociologists, as well as scientists and epidemiologists. I mean, you've got to take into account all those people's points of view and all of the, and the reason you do that is because, for instance, um, the Trump administration has delayed the payment of taxes for 3 months. And one of the unintended consequences of that is that public health facilities in states and counties are underfunded and are laying people off. Um, and you need the technical experts there to tell you that that's going to happen. That's why you need those people there. You need economists to explain why shutting down the economy, how hard, what the impacts are going to be long term before you just send everybody home. You also need epidemiologists to talk about the fact that for every 1% rise in unemployment, you get X number of additional deaths. The death rates actually go up, and that's a well documented phenomena. So you're actually killing people by creating unemployment. So those types of unexpected consequences need to come into the decision making process. So that's all I was saying. I wasn't saying we should defer to scientists, but you need domain experts to explain to the decision makers the possible impacts so that they are making well informed decisions. And I feel like, I mean, one of my frustrations with Eisenstein's essay was I agreed so much, like you did, with so many of the things he said. Uh, the idea of modernization. So the modernist project is what postmodernists call this idea that we're going to engineer our way to a perfect society where everyone's happy and there's no risk and we're all going to live forever. And it's kind of absurd. And as you said, you're making that choice between length of night of life and quality of life. And when Melissa, the last late spring, early summer, the doctors wanted to give her radiation therapy, and it would have meant that she would have been sicker, and she probably wouldn't have been able to go to Minot, but she probably would have lived maybe 4 months longer. It's possible. And when she said no, the doctor actually said to her, "Oh, you value quality of life over length of life." And he said that to her at that time, but at the same time, he didn't actually talk to her to find out about that before he tried to push her to do this radiation therapy, which was really sad. Anyway, I agree with Eisenstein's analysis of that, and I think it's super important. But the thing that's frustrating for me is that when he goes off on these sort of new agey stuff at the end, where he's proposing solutions based on in areas that he's not really an expert, it basically undermines the whole first half of it. And I want people to listen to that first 3/4 of his essay. I think it's super important. I think everything that you brought up, I agree, and it was refreshing. The reason I asked Sarah and Scott to read it as well was because it was so refreshing to hear somebody saying these things that we've kind of been talking about amongst ourselves, Sarah and Scott and I. So I really did like that. But I wish somebody could say it and just offer those critiques and let them sit out there, so that people will think about it without adding in, whatever our own crazy solutions might be. Because I think that if we can get people thinking about that critique, eventually, if it can become more widespread, we'll find better solutions because people will start asking the right questions. So I kind of went on long about that, but I want to wrap up with just one more thing from this video. When you talked about my dad talking about the most great peace, I think there was a misinterpretation there as well, because the Baha'i writings say it's going to be 10,000 years before the most great peace. And I think what he was talking about is he talks about, how the old systems are falling apart and coming down, and it's imminent that those are all going to come down. And I think that's true. And the belief in the Baha'i faith is that the lesser peace, which means sort of an end to global warfare, and by this, as you mentioned, it's not, I think, what people expect, whether nobody's ever going to kill anyone, but it's like we're not going to have another World War II or World War One, where you've got the entire world sort of going at each other, and bloodshed on a scale at which had never been seen before. And that lesser peace supposedly was going to come before the end of the 20th century. And I think, I don't know. As you say, interpreting prophecy is just a wormhole. But the fall of the Soviet Union, and the coming of the EU, and I mean, actually, if you look at the coming of the EU, it's pretty amazing, because most global warfare came out of European conflicts, and the EU has actually resolved that, at least in the short term. Anyway, that's all beside the point. Great to hear your interpretation and your thoughts on that essay. I enjoyed it as well. Like I said, I threw together the short version over the video of us soaking in the river. Look forward to hearing other things from you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Later.